continuation of the last video where we introduced HTML and we talked about semantic HTML. So, in the last video we took some text information that we had written, which in my case was sort of like a portfolio website for myself, and I've written some notes here about my projects and my work. And then I started marking up the content that I had written using these HTML tags. And I'm using the tags to create context and meaning, or provide meaning to tell, the software and explain like what each of these elements is and how it functions in the document. Okay? So far I've created a section, I've got a header in my section. A section always has a header, and then I have a heading, right, which is the actual text. And then I added some a navigation section or some navigation, and then a list of things that are going to be links later. I haven't made these links yet, but I did make some list items here, but these are going to be, like a list of content in my document, or this could function as an index, right? And then I created another section here, a subsection. So this section is inside the first one. Let me actually take out a little bit of the spaces here. And then maybe we'll be able to see a little more of this kind of in a more compact way, and it'll be a little easier to see what's going on here, right? Okay. So let me just move these guys, right? So what we can see here is we can see that this section right here is inside the other section. So this tag, when I select it, you can see it actually closes with the one down at the bottom here. So you can see it's got these little boxes around the brackets. And if I look, actually, it usually just selects like where you can see, oh yeah, actually I guess maybe this line is showing it. So you can see this line is a little lighter than the other lines, and it lines up with this guy. Right? So we can kind of tell that this one surrounds everybody else. So what other kind of markup can we use? Well, I have a second section here, and I could make a header and then put a heading, and I'll use another H2. Okay, so this is the my work section. And if I wanted, I could say that maybe each one of these projects that I've worked on is a subsection to this section here. Right? And if that was the case, then I could surround each one of these with a section tag and put another header in there, and it would be an H3 because it would be a subsection of its parent section. Okay? If I felt that well, I'm going to call them articles, but if I felt that these portfolio items were complete by themselves, they acted as a complete story, and it was possible to remove this information from this document and show it somewhere else, and it would stand alone and be complete by itself. Instead of using the section tag, I could use the article tag. So I'll do that here. I'm actually not sure that that's actually the case with this thing, but I just kind of made this information up, so it's not super detailed, so I don't really feel like this stands alone, but let's say that it did. So in that case, I could use the article tag. So the difference between a section and an article is a section is a part of a larger document, and it may not stand alone by itself. An article could be part of a larger document, but it's a complete story or a complete article, or it's a complete thing by itself. So things that can be an article, a blog post, an email could be an article. It's a complete thing. You might have a list of email messages, but each message could be its own article, right? A Facebook post might be complete by itself, right? A Twitter post a tweet would be complete maybe. So maybe an article would be good for something like that. So, when you make your software products, you'll choose the tag, and it's not like you're always writing magazine articles or stories or whatever, right? But you have to look at the content that you have and then pick the tag that kind of best describes it, right? So I'll put an article in here. Again, an article like a section should have a heading, right? And I use the header tag here, but if you actually, if you only have one child of the header, you actually don't need to really wrap it in a header. So we can actually simplify here, and I could say maybe this is going to be an H3. So I could just simplify this maybe, and then put a paragraph here, and a paragraph at the, I wish that thing would quit popping up there. And I could put a paragraph at the end here, and there we go, right? So that's kind of one article there. And then I could continue here and make a couple more articles. Maybe I'll do that. I have 3 of these, so I'm going to paste that first one. And then what I'll do is I'll just cut this and paste it here. And then I'll paste this one in here like that. And then I did this other one here. Actually, I got these out of order now, but actually it doesn't matter. I'll do this, and then I'll cut this. You know, so you can put this together however you want, but you know, just remember that we want to follow the rules. If we have an opening tag, we should have a closing tag. And if we have a nested tag, or a tag that's inside another tag, that tag needs to close before the outer tag closes, right? Because the tags should not overlap. Okay, so that cleans up that section, right? I have a section that contains a list of articles, and that's perfectly okay. It's just the way you might write something in a magazine or, you know, anywhere. Right now we're just publishing stuff on the internet, so, you know, it's kind of the same thing, though. We're communicating with people, right? And people are going to read this in the same way. I'm going to make another section here, and maybe I'll put experience and awards in here, and I'll make experience in H2, because remember, this section doesn't belong to the previous section. It belongs to the parent section, which we had an H1 in. So probably an H2 is the best choice here. So I'm going to do experience as an H2. And then this is probably, actually, it looks like I have a list of experience here. So let's use a list tag again. And I'm going to say that the order doesn't matter here. You know, it might, right? And if we felt that actually, we'll do an example. Let's say the order does matter with this. So I'm going to use the OL tag. And when we use the OL tag, we can still use the list item inside. So I'll put the list item here, and then I'll put these guys here like this, and then I'll have to close them outside like that, right? So we just have to keep track of, you know, where we have an open and a closed tag. And then maybe, you know, awards right here. I want to use a heading for this, but I want it to be a subsection of experience. So I'll add another section tag. And there I'm creating kind of a hierarchy of information, and I'm creating relationships between the information that I have. So I'm saying, you know, I'm explicitly saying awards are kind of like part of the experience, okay? Or part of my experience, right? I have a list of work experience, and I have a list of awards, right? And maybe down here, maybe the awards, again, maybe the order matters. So I'll use an OL, right? And then I'll put my tags here like this. It kind of does that because it sees that I didn't close the tag, so it tabs that in once because it thinks I'm going to nest it inside the previous one, but I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'll just close these out here. You'll get used to how the editor does this. So if I type the bracket and the slash, it'll see that this tag is open, and it'll want to close it for me. So, you know, as you get used to the code hints in the code editor, it will, you know, you'll code faster, right? But it'll just take a little bit of practice. So let's add one more. This contact section at the bottom here is really, it's kind of like a footer. So any section can have a header, and it can also have a footer. So this section right here has a header at the top, and the closing section tag is at the bottom. But what I can say is maybe this contact information is going to go in the footer of my document. So the footer has, like, you know, extra follow-up information or details that kind of I don't know, that fill in or add information after you get to the bottom of the page, right? So maybe what I'll do is I'll put a footer here, right? You know, like you might put footnotes in your footer, right? So maybe I'll put my footer here. And again, a footer can have a heading. It can have, you know, paragraphs and lists and all sorts of things in it, right? So maybe I'll do an H2 here. You know, again, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of up to you, but the idea here is we're choosing the tag not because of the size that it applies to the font. We're choosing the tag to say what function this element has within the document. And then the style of it will control with our style sheet, and we'll do that in another lesson. So I said interesting links here, but maybe that would be a list, and maybe the order doesn't matter, so I'll make it a UL, and then I'll just put an LI tag in there, and I'll put interesting link number 1, and, you know, we could actually fill these in later with some actual links, but I'll just do interesting link 1 through 3. Okay, so that's how I would mark this up, right? That would be my beginning markup right there. Okay, so I've got a section. My sections always have a heading or a header or both, and within a section you might add any other content and mark that up with its function in the document. So if text is a paragraph, you might mark up that paragraph, right, as such. Or you might mark up a list of things as a list, okay? And when you've gotten to this stage, you can look in here and you can look for more detail. So, you know, if I look at the list of tags here and I read through this, you can see that we've got image and media. So if you want to embed an audio document in your file, you can use the audio tag. Or if you want to embed an image, you can add an image in here. Right? So I don't have a file here. Maybe I'll add one in a moment, but for fun, let's imagine I have the header here, and in my header, I also want to include my picture. So in that case, I would use the image tag. Let me zoom in on that, right? Now, note that the image tag takes, in order to connect it to an image, it takes one of these attributes, right? So inside the tag here, you can see this is written as, it's hard to read this one here, but really what they've written is they've written the image tag like this, and you'll notice it doesn't have a closing tag, so it doesn't do this, okay? Like it's even coloring that red, like, hey, that's not valid. So the image is one of those tags, the IMG tag is one of the tags that breaks the rule. It doesn't have a closing tag. But what it does have is it has these attributes that you put in here. So in the example above here, they've added 3 attributes, the class, source, and alt. Okay? So attributes always follow this format. It's a name, equals, and then a value, and the value is in quotation marks. And it's best practice to use the double quote, though you can use a single quote if you want, but as long as both quotes are the same. Okay? So the source says where the image comes from, and you put the address or the file name or the URL to the image that you want. Okay? The alt tag, and the attributes always go in the opening tag. Okay? In our case, we only have an opening tag, remember, because this one doesn't have a closing tag. The alt attribute says what to display or what to show if the actual picture can't be shown. Okay, and why do we need this? Well, maybe if this image cannot be found for some reason, the URL is missing or the server that serves the image is not available, then the computer will display the alternate text in its place. Okay? For some reason, that's actually not happening here, but it should, right? Also, if you have a disability and you're using a screen reader, like let's say you're vision impaired, then the screen reader will read the alt text and that will tell us what the image is. So imagine like you can't see the screen, but you're still trying to browse the web, and it's trying to tell you that there's a picture, but the computer only has this piece of information, right? So it just says /media/example/grapefruit-slice-332. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything, right? But if it says, oh, grapefruit slice atop a pile of other slices, you're like, you get a picture of what it is in your mind and you kind of know what it is, right? So we should always include the alt, okay, and say what we have. So I'll borrow this, and like I said, I want to include my picture here, so I'll say, you know, let me say my photo.jpg, maybe it's a JPEG, right? And then the alt will be Mitchell's profile. I don't know. Actually, profile. Let's do Mitchell's picture, you know, or picture of Mitchell. I don't know. I could put anything in there, right? So, so there's my alt text. So there's one alternative. Let's take a look at see what other kind of tags we have, right? So these are images and multimedia, embedded content. Okay, so this is kind of a special thing. We're not going to use this, but you could embed a whole other website within your website using the iframe tag. Or if there's special content, like software kind of content, you can embed this. They used to use this for Flash. You know, if you remember Flash, right? You'd always use the embed tag. For special scripting purposes, you could use one of these tags. You could add code to your page. If you want to have a living document where people can edit it and you want to be able to see the edits that they made, we have some special tags for that. So delete shows that content was deleted, and insert says this content was inserted, right? And then there's a few other things in here. I want to look for, where is it here? Yeah, this long section right here, which is inline text semantics. So this is a really interesting section. It gives us the anchor tag, the abbreviation tag, the bold tag, and a whole bunch of others. So this is where we can get expressive with our text and the way that our text communicates or speaks to people. So, you know, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. I can't really describe it all, but let's talk about a few things. So for my header, maybe I have my picture and then I also have a paragraph. Actually, I'm going to make a small text, right? So small is actually a tag in here. I think it's on this list. Yes, small represents side comments and small print, like copyright and legal stuff, right? So I could say, you know, copyright, you know, Mitchell 2020, right? Oops, I should have said copyright here. So, and actually, you know, when I look at this as small print, maybe that should actually go in the footer. So maybe I'll take that down here and I'll put it at the bottom of my footer, okay? Maybe right here, maybe I'll just use a regular paragraph and I'll say, you know, HTML Wizard's Apprentice. I don't know, right? Okay, so that could be my subheading, right? So my portfolio, and I could say Wizard's Apprentice. I don't know, right? So I could put that in there. But maybe HTML is it's an abbreviation, right? So it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So actually we have a tag for that. So it's the ABBR tag, and you can look at here and it shows you how to use it, right? So what I'll do is I'll add the ABBR tag and I'll surround the HTML text with it to say that this is an abbreviation. And normally, you know, an abbreviation, you have to know what it is, right? Like, you know, it's a bunch of letters and each letter stands for a word, and, you know, who's going to tell you what the letters stand for, right? You know, you ever get stuck in a chat room and you're like, what do they mean? You know, right? When people abbreviate stuff. So, you know, HTML to the rescue, you can add the title attribute. And again, it's an attribute. So we say the name title equals, and then the value followed by the quotation marks, right? And you can see it here. They've got the title. I actually did the same example I did. So I'll put that in. What did they do? They did hypertext as one word. Actually, I'll just copy and paste what they did, right? And I'll put that here. Now, what's cool about this is an automated service would be able to see what the abbreviation was and then read the text here. Also, a sight impaired person would see HTML if they weren't sure what it is. The screen reader could tell them by reading this part of it. Third, people that can see and can read the page, if we look at the page here and I refresh it, you can see my picture would be here. It doesn't show up, so it shows me the alt text. And then here, if I hover over the HTML thing right there, you can see the little box pops up and it shows me the text, right? It says what the abbreviation is. So if someone is not sure what's going on with what's that HTML mean, they can hover over it, right? And we could even go even further. You notice that they have these pop-ups like this on Wikipedia, right? We could tie our JavaScript in here, and JavaScript could read this and do a more elaborate pop-up if that was something that was important to the interaction of our page, okay? So there's a lot more to this, right? And if we write this and mark things up carefully, then we get a lot more out of it, and people get a lot more out of our documents too, okay? So anyway, so thanks for watching. I'll stop the video here, and my challenge to you now is to read the tag list here, especially the section here that's inline text semantics. Read through the content that you have after you've given it the section markup and the semantic markup, and then ask yourself if you can find places where you can use some of this inline text, okay? So the inline text is always going to go into some block like a paragraph or a heading or something like that, or a list item, okay? And just read through this and see if you can use any of these. Like emphasis, is the EM tag. So if you want to emphasize some text, right? Like I could maybe use that up here in this, create a homepage for San Francisco. I could emphasize it, or I could emphasize COVID-19. There's also another one in here called mark, and that's kind of like using a highlighter pen to highlight some text. There's quotes, so if you're quoting somebody, like somebody said something, you can wrap it in the quote tag, and you can even include a citation to say who said it. It's kind of like the abbreviation, right? And then there's the small text. So if you got fine print, you want to add that, you can put that here. There's the strong tag. So strong says you want to say something with a strong voice, right? Kind of like emphasis says I want to emphasize what I'm saying. Strong says I want to say it loudly, okay? So anyway, there's a whole bunch here. My challenge to you is to go through this and read this and see if you can find places to use these tags, okay? See how many of these you can use. And feel free to invent places to use them. So if you see one that's interesting, just challenge yourself to find a way to fit it into your document, okay? So thanks for watching, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments.